Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Supporting English Language Learners with Clicker. My name's Phil and I'm joined by Louise Dawson, who's an independent consultant supporting schools with their inclusive provisions across the Middle East. Now, Louise has 23 years experience education working in the UK, Hong Kong and the Middle East. And before her current consulting role, Louise held roles leading inclusion at Jumeirah College, King's School Al Barsha and Wellington International School. Now, I asked Louise to join us on this presentation because international schools typically have very high levels of students who don't speak English as their first language. Louise is an expert in understanding both the specific challenges faced by English language learners and how those challenges can be successfully overcome. Now, throughout this webinar, if you've got any questions, there's a question window, chat window. You can put your questions in there, and my colleague Katie is going to be answering questions, and we'll try and get to all of those during the course of the web demonstration, or we'll answer them very, very shortly afterwards. Okay, so Louise, welcome to the webinar.
Good evening, Phil. Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So, look, could you start just by outlining some of the specific challenges which affect the literacy development of English language learners?
Yeah, absolutely. Highlighting my own experiences and those barriers discussed when I talk to my peers, the points most commonly raised were gaining that emergency vocabulary to help students take their first steps in English. So by emergency, we don't mean literally the emergency words, we mean the basic high frequency vocabulary that a child needs to get by in English. Then we thought about phonics, blending, pronunciation, modeling language and sentence structure, both in the spoken and in the written methods. Moving on to progressing to grammar challenges, English is so difficult. Expanding general vocabulary and topic-specific vocabulary as we move into topics like science and geography, etc.
That's great. Now, we're going to look at how Clicker can help in these areas shortly, but are there any implications for teachers and teaching assistants in schools we need to particularly consider?
Yeah, I think differentiation is one of the hardest things. English additional language provision can typically be very resource heavy and requires a wide array of differentiation. These challenges then translate to a high need of teacher time requirement, but also sometimes additional adult cost. Okay,
great. So look, we're talking about Clicker in this presentation. If you're not familiar with Clicker, there's lots of information on our website. So head over to www.cricksoft.com if you want a bit more background information on it. But basically, Clicker is a complete literacy support tool. So reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And age appropriate from, I'd say, about 3 years old, typically up to about sort of 11-year-olds, at which point we would tend to transition students onto our Docs Plus product, which is aimed at secondary. So if we just click on the Clicker link here, Clicker's kind of split into Clicker 8, which is a fully featured program for Windows or Mac computers. And we also have our Clicker apps, the first of which is the Clicker Writer. So that supports the writing aspects of Clicker on iPads and Chromebooks. And we've also got Clicker Books coming out shortly and more apps planned later in the year. So the sort of medium-term aim is to get lots of the aspects of Clicker available on iPads and Chromebooks as well. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to close the website down now. And what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about a child that has little or no English taking their very first steps. So when you're in Clicker, there's a folder icon here, and you can jump straight into Learning Grids. Now, Learning Grids is this amazing bank of resources, a library of resources. At the moment, there's almost 3,000. There's 2,962 resources on our UK site at the moment, and they are scattered across lots of different subject areas. So we've got English, maths, science, geography, history, and then within those areas, if we go into English, we have our different categories. and then within those categories we have our different topics. And you might notice that down the bottom there we have a topic specifically designed to help English language learners called New to English. So that's where I'm going to start. And in this first activity that we're going to have a look at, we're going to look at School Explore. So let me just show you this, and I'll be showing you the activities, and then Louise will be able to comment on how she sees these being used or the advantages of these particular activities. So in this one, it's very, very straightforward. As I move my mouse around, you can see the mouse changes to a smiley face when there's something that I can click on, and it also pops up some words there. And if I click on that,
dining room,
you can hear those words spoken, and you can listen again if you wish here.
Dining room.
And when you do it a second time, it actually highlights those words as it speaks. So let's do one more.
Classroom.
Okay.
Classroom.
Great.
I think that's a really good place to start. I think I like this when I have a student in the classroom who needs to do something independently, because maybe as a teacher I'm delivering to the other learners and the child isn't able to access what I'm delivering. So I can place the child on this activity because it's very simple and very easy to navigate on their own, regardless of age.
Yeah, I mean, that is a problem. I'm talking to teachers on a daily basis, and they often say, you know, it can be very difficult when a new child comes to the class that has no English at all. Okay, well, look, a follow-on activity from that, if we put it back to learning grids here, so a follow-on activity from that is this talk set. Okay, and this is what we call a listen and say activity. So the front screen is a practice screen. I'm just going to head straight into the activity, and I'm going to click on this picture.
Classroom.
And I'm listening to the word classroom. Then I'm going to click on my microphone, and then I've got a pop-up sound recorder now, which allows me to practice. So I'm going to say classroom. Okay, and then when I click done, you can see the icons changed because it's got a recording on, and then I can obviously go to the next screen.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you, Phil. I think I like this activity because it supports learners to gain that speech confidence. When children start to learn a language, often we find a silent period. We call it the silent period, when a student is taking information in and learning. We often find that students are embarrassed to practice speaking out loud, especially when there's an adult present. And with this activity, we find that embarrassment is reduced and out loud practice increases. I also like this activity because you're able to record your own speech, but the computerized program actually delivers human speech. It's not a computerized voice, which I think is really great when we're modeling language development.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Louise. We will come on to listen to the computerized voice in later activities. But yeah, these New to English resources actually have a voice actor recording the speech. And at the end, there is a summary that both the child and the teacher can use to compare what the computer said
Classroom
to their own recordings. Classroom. Okay, and so now I'm just going to close, let me just close those two down. Now there are lots and lots of other activities in the New to English series. I mean, we could do a presentation just purely on New to English. But the next thing that you mentioned, Louise, you were talking about phonics. So Clicker is really, really good for supporting phonics, but the approach that you might take in the UK to teaching phonics might be slightly different to the approach you might take in North America. So we have on our Learning Grid site a separate section with localized activities, and you'll see that our first subject, English, when we click on the North America site, goes to English Language Arts. Okay, and then when we click on that subject area, we have a category, Sounds and Letters here. Okay, so let's open that one. And there's lots of activities here, and what I'm going to open up is something called short A word families, which is something called a clicker board. Okay, so in this clicker board, it's laid out a little bit like a mind map, but the purpose of this one is for us to look at the initial sound and then try and put that together with the at. So we're going to go r, at, rat. Okay, and at that point I can put my rat into there, and then I can go f, at, fat, and put that in there. And then at the end, the teacher could perhaps ask the child to read out all the words on the right hand side, or if they wanted to actually read the sort of the separate sections of them, the child could actually go at, rat, fat, etc.
Oh, that's really good. So I think in North America, they call this structure onset and rhyme, as opposed to the UK's initial phoneme one at a time. Onset and rhyming builds that learner awareness of the common parts to a word. This exposes learners to word families, lays a foundation for automation in decoding, and helps with that spelling and writing, all of those skills being grown slowly and carefully.
Okay, so thank you for that. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the UK site, and we're going to have a look at the more sort of letters and sounds approach that you might take developing phonics skills in UK schools. So let's have a look at sounds and letters here. Okay, so we've got lots of, again, lots and lots of resources. But the one that I'm going to start with is phoneme sounds, and this is a talk set. And here we're looking at the initial sound, followed by words beginning with that sound. So we can listen, and we can of course use that, use the microphone to practice, and then we can listen again.
Sun.
And we can practice lots of words that begin with that initial s sound.
So this is just one of a whole set of activities which helps students to raise their phonemic awareness. This is the ability to understand how words are formed and to break them down into those individual sounds. Understanding the sounds in words not only helps them with reading, but again, similar to the North American one, the spelling and writing enable that to grow.
Great. Okay, so look, now I think it's time to move on to looking at modeling language and sentence structure. Okay, so to do this, what we're going to do is look at some of our writing clicker sets. So a clicker set is any sort of resource that works within Clicker. And if I just clear the current search and we go back into English, let's imagine we're doing some writing about ourselves. So I'm going to choose About Me here. And you can see there are different types of activities. So the simplest activity, which is the one we're going to look at first, is called a sentence set, the simplest writing activity that is. And we can filter by sentence sets by ticking these boxes on the side. And then we're going to perhaps look at some more complex, maybe a connect set afterwards. But if I just filter by sentence set to start off with, you can see all of the sentence sets there. And to start off with, we're going to do my favorite things. Okay, so the way this is set up is I've got on each page of the clicker set, there's enough words for me to create a single sentence. Okay, and there's also a picture, so I can send up the picture and I would write my favorite color is orange. Now, if I wasn't very sure, because my first language is not English, I'm not very confident to rearrange that vocab, what I could do is have a listen to it. So the little green button there is going to give me a spoken model.
My favourite colour is orange.
Okay, so I can hear that, and then I'm going to create it. If I can't read a word, I can right-click and listen to it.
Favourite.
Okay, my favourite. Now, if you're on an iPad, you might think, well, how do I right-click? Because on an iPad, I'm not normally using a mouse. But there's a little button there called a sound shift button, which performs that same function.
Colour.
Okay, my favorite color is orange. And then when I punctuate, and for those that are new to Clicker, you're going to like this, Clicker will respond when I put my full stop in.
My favourite colour is orange.
So of course I can actually listen back to that sentence and compare it to
my favourite colour is orange.
And know that in this case, I've got it correct. And then of course I move on to the next sentence, etc.
I think some children may still find that a little difficult. Can you change that activity to make it any simpler?
Yeah, sure. So we've at the moment got a spoken model on this. Let me just clear the decks. So you can change anything in Clicker by going into edit view. So if we go to Clicker set and edit, what that allows us to do, I've just got a little window here. I need to just close that away. Sorry. Got a zoom window that's persisting and won't disappear. There we go. So what we've got here is a listen model, a spoken model. So we could change that to view and copy if we wanted, or even view and remember. Let's start with view and remember. That's a little bit more tricky. So I do apologize. It's the this Zoom window is right over where I'm trying to click on the screen. Let's move that out of the way. Okay.
We just love technology.
Oh, don't we just? Okay, so so if I come out of edit view now, so now when I click on the green button, instead of hearing the sentence, I can see the sentence. I could listen to it as well by clicking on it, but notice that the actual words at the bottom of the screen are grayed out, so I can't access them. Now, if that's still too difficult, you can do view and copy. And in that case, we've actually got it visible all the time, so I can now copy that sentence. You can go one step further, and that is by changing the order. So we've got it in random order at the moment. What we could do is put it in what we call guided order, okay? There are other options, but these are probably the main ones you'd use. And in this case, I literally cannot get it wrong, because if I try and click on favorite, it doesn't do anything. So I go, now favorite lights up. My favorite food is pizza. There we go.
My favorite food is pizza.
Look at that differentiation with a few very simple clicks. I love it.
Okay, so what I said was that there are different types of writing grids, and of course you can use these on Clicker Writer on the iPad, and you can use them in Clicker 8 on the computer as I'm doing now. And the next type of writing grid that we're going to look at is something called a connect set. Okay, so if I take the filter off sentence sets and put it onto connect sets instead, you'll see we've now got a whole page full of these connect sets, and they're color coded orange, so it's easy for us to find them. And right at the bottom, we'll go for that one. So it's the same theme, my favorite things. Okay, but now you can see this is the next level up.
Ah, so now the learner has to pick and choose from different words and different phrases.
Exactly. So, you know, on the previous one, there was only one word, only one sentence per page, whereas here we've got lots more choices. So it's starting to stretch them a little more. Okay. So, what we're going to do now is perhaps head towards a grammatical exercise. Let's have a look at some sentence patterns. Okay. So, if we go back to our learning grids and go to English, okay, I'll clear off the previous search, and you'll see in grammar, there's various sections here, including sentence grammar, okay? And within that, we have lots and lots of activities again. And the one that I'm actually going to do is I like sentence patterns. Okay, so this is again a sentence set, and on each page you've got a very simple sentence: I like books, and the next one, I like sport, etc.
So I think I like this activity because of the repetition. The repetition is really good for modeling for English language learners. Basically, they are learning the structure, but only changing one part at a time.
Okay, now part of Clicker is, of course, its word processing facility. We've already seen that when we put a sentence in, it will read that sentence back to us. And as our English language learners become more confident in their abilities, they might start actually doing some typing with the keyboard as opposed to necessarily relying on word banks and writing frames at the bottom of the screen. And one of the support facilities that we've got within Clicker is a prediction tool, and that can help us if we've got maybe if we're going to, you know, we need a bit of help with our grammar. If I was going to get a sentence wrong, like we was going swimming, if I type in we, look, it gives me were, but not was. Whereas if I change it to I, then it's going to give me was. Now, it's not going to stop me typing the wrong thing, but the predictor is going to guide me in choices that are more likely to make grammatical sense in the context of the sentence that I'm writing.
I've heard quite often people say to me that prediction is a form of cheating and that it removes that independent thought. However, I feel that from research and experience, giving children different vocabulary actually supports them to develop. How do we expect children to develop language if it's not readily available to them? And this tool really does make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I'd say there. So certainly, I'd agree with you. The research is that if you expose children to a wider range of correctly spelled vocabulary, then they tend to improve their own levels of vocabulary. But also, what Clicker's doing and the support that it's giving is what we do as teachers. We give that appropriate scaffolding, and then as the child becomes more confident, we then remove that scaffolding, and they're able to be successful. Right. But, okay, so let's have a look at a talk. We haven't looked at a talking book yet, and books are a great part of Clicker. And what we're going to do is look at a book now, which is going to help us with some verbs. So still sticking with grammar for the moment, let's look at verbs. Okay, and within here, we've got various books. Now, there's books you can actually make your own books, but I'm just going to start with a reading book, and this is Present, Past, and Future Read a Book. Okay, so on this one, okay, we've got walk. I am walking to school. Yesterday I walked to school, and tomorrow I will walk to school. And the child could practice reading that themselves, or they can press the button and have that read back to them. Now, from that activity, we would then go on to perhaps get the child to do some writing. So one of the things that we talked about was the fact that you've got make a book activities there as well. Okay, so they could rewrite their own book. Okay, or what we could perhaps do is use one of these connect sets here. So we've got verb tenses, present, past, and future. Let's have a little look at that one. Okay, so there we can go every day she, and then we have to pick out which words and phrases will match together so that you get that agreement with the subject verb agreement. Okay. Sorry, did you want to?
Yeah, that covers all the grammar then.
Okay, so let's move on from grammar now. I mean, there are lots and lots of activities to explore, and I know that many of you who've joined this webinar have got Clicker already, and I certainly recommend spending some time having a look at some of those different activities. There are all sorts of different approaches to this. If they're struggling with subject verb agreement, there's a specific subject verb agreement connect set there. There's a whole wealth of activities on grammar, but we're going to move on now, and we're going to look now about at sort of the general topic of vocabulary and how we go about expanding vocabulary. So the first one I'm going to do, and just to show you, if you know what you're looking for, it's an activity you've used before, you can just search in Learning Grids using this search bar at the top. So I'm just going to look for expanding sentences, and I'm going to use this expanding sentences connect set. Now this one, we start with a really simple sentence. The dog barked.
The dog barked.
Okay, but now what we're going to do is we're going to improve that sentence. So we're going to say the huge dog ferociously barked at the children.
The huge dog ferociously barked at the children.
Okay, so that's one way that we can use Clicker to expand the vocabulary. In this case, we're giving the child a sentence and say, make this sentence better. Now, as they're progressing in their English language learning, then what we might find is that they that we need to encourage them to use a wider range of vocab, and there's lots of learning grids that are good for that. So true story, when I was a teacher, I had a pet hate, and my pet hate was the word nice. I couldn't bear that being used in any work that was handed in to me. So what we've got here is a bank that's going to help with that one, called alternative adjectives. Okay, so let's open this one, and you can see now, instead of big, little, good, bad, happy, sad, and the awful, nasty, and nice, we've now got a range of much more interesting vocabulary to use.
I think this is a really great way to stop learners from using that safe vocabulary. The words to choose from really push learners and takes them out of their comfort zone. Love it.
Yeah, I mean that's what typically happens. You start to gain some experience in English, but then you kind of settle into the words that you're comfortable with. So this is a way of kind of pushing you on to learn a wider range of vocab. So those are just a couple of ways that you might approach more general vocab. But what about topic-specific vocabulary? So certainly as they're getting older, they're progressing through the school, the English has gone beyond just the sort of day-to-day high-frequency words. They now need to understand how to use topic-specific vocabulary. So I think we'll move away now from we've just stuck in the English section so far. Let's go into something else. So I'm going to we'll go for science. Okay, so we've got lots and lots of really high quality science materials here, okay, and we'll pick living world, saying let's do evolution. Okay, so if I pick evolution, you'll see there's a whole bank, a whole set of different resources here. I'm going to start off with a word bank. I'm going to start off with evolution quick words. So here you've just got one page with some keywords on.
I like these simple grids where they are topic specific, because as an early writer, the students then have easy access to all the main keywords and phrases that help them put together sentences and paragraphs.
Brilliant. Okay, so look, the next level up is also a word bank. In fact, I'm going to be showing you 3 different word banks here. But this next one is called Adaptation, Inheritance and Evolution. And what you can see is that there's a separate tab for each of those subtopics.
I think this helps with structure and content, doesn't it? So it guides them to appropriate vocabulary depending on the subtopics within that overarching topic. I think this allows students to grow and develop, again, the sentences, the paragraphs, all within topic-based umbrellas. Love it.
And I think what this particularly helps with is what you might describe as blank page syndrome. Teacher says, write about inheritance. Well, where on earth do I start? Well, what I can do is click on the inheritance tab of this word bank, and I've immediately got some ideas of words that I should be using, and that was going to help me kick off and start writing about inheritance in this case. Okay, and then the last one of these that we're just going to look at briefly is what we call one of our A to Z word banks. So adaptation, inheritance and evolution, A to Z. So here you can see that the words are now scattered across an A to Z word bank.
So through that you have 3 different levels of support, don't you? You have the topic, then you have the 3 subtopics within the major topic, but then you pair right back. So it's enabling children to think, what word do I want to use? I know it begins with H. I can't think. They can go here and find it much easier. And I just like the tiered support that it gives.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you've got a child that maybe they're struggling with spelling some words, but they've got a good idea about when they're writing about, say, inheritance, what words they want, you're providing them an additional level of challenge by giving them that A to Z vocab, and they're going to have to go and find the word rather than perhaps being more directed. But yeah, I think this leads us really nicely into the last, I use the word nice, leads us really well into the final section on differentiation, because that is a clear example of how you can use Clicker to differentiate. And of course, depending on the range of abilities in the class, we might at the same time as using those 3 word banks also be using sentence sets and connect sets. But I'm going to finish off just by picking a topic and just talking about how we might use that to deliver a lesson to a whole class, which has children who are English language learners at different levels. There might be other children with special needs in that class. There might also be, at the other end, some high flyers that need challenging. Okay, so to give you kind of put this in some sort of context, let's go to Story Corner. And in Story Corner, we've got lots of traditional stories, fables and world stories, myths and legends, etc. Got lots of stories, but the brilliant thing about them is it isn't just the stories. You've got a full range of differentiated activities. So going back to what Louise was saying at the start of the webinar, it's a real challenge, and it's very it's very time consuming for teachers and teaching assistants creating this differentiated content so that we can deal with all manner of needs, including those who don't speak English their first language within the classroom. So I'm going to pick King Midas and the Golden Touch. And the first thing that we're going to look at is the reader book. So as a teacher in this class, I would probably open this up, and this is the full version of the book. So each page has several sentences on it. Okay, it's the full version of the story, and we could use that to introduce it to the class. Okay, now some children could then, because Clicker Books is coming out later this month, some children would then be able to load that up onto their iPads and Chromebooks and read that for themselves, or have some help, because there is a button that will read it for you, or you can just get, if you're stuck on individual words,
immediately,
you can just click on the word you're stuck on, and that can help with your reading fluency. But if I'm new to English, that might be too hard for me. So what we've also included for you is a read it yourself version. So now we've got one sentence per page, really just simplifies the story, abridges it down to the key facts, and that allows even those who are less confident in their reading skills to successfully read the story independently. Then we've got a whole range of resources that go with it. So we've got the talk sets, which work really well with the talk for writing approach, and the whole idea that if we can tell the story out loud, we're much more likely to then be successful at writing it. Okay, and we've got sentence sets, connect sets. Remember, those are the sort of the earlier activities, and then as they become, and then as we're working with children that are perhaps more confident, we've got the quick words, we've got the A to Z, and even our answer to printing out loads of worksheets. We've got Golden Touch questions, where you've got a question and then some words to help you answer it. Okay, finally, the last activity which I would finish off with this class is that they then get to write the book themselves. So here we can do King Midas and the Golden Touch by Phil. I can click in the picture and choose the right picture to start, and I can click into the text here, and we could then use the word bank to help us with the content. So there you go, a fully differentiated activity.
Absolutely. So this just provides, so you've got one topic, every child needs to access that book. In this example is King Midas, and yet every activity can be differentiated. Children can be accessing at all different levels within the same class, or on the same table, accessing what they need in order to learn and develop and grow on their topic, but all having that same conversation about King Midas.
Brilliant. Well, look,
very
Louise,
inclusive.
well, Louise, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I'd like to thank everyone who's watched this webinar. There's a huge number of you joined this webinar. I'm very grateful for you to spend the time with us talking about Clicker. So what we're going to be doing in the next couple of days is sending you out the details on how you can access the recording. So of course you might want to refer back to this. If you're already users of Clicker, you might want to use some of these ideas with the classes that you teach. And also for those schools that haven't already got Clicker, there's going to be some information coming out on how you can find out more about getting Clicker in your school. But that's it from me. Thank you very much indeed for all your attention. Thanks again to Louise, and goodbye.
Thank you.